Okay, what's next? Well, we want to talk about connecting senders and receivers. So how do we successfully connect two devices together and make sure that they're going to have a coherent connection? So again, recapping briefly, we've talked about data and how we send that over an IP network. We've talked about timing and how we send that over an IP network. But whereas with baseband video, we might refer to something like the HDMI standard or the SDI standard to give us that shared interpretation of what we should be doing with that data and that timing information, now we're working over IP. So we need to extend our interpretation such that it will work over an IP network. And that's the bit that we're going to look at next. So SMPTE 2110 talks about using Session Description Protocol, SDP. An SDP is an existing protocol, and the reason that we need it is because we're already sending our video and indeed our timing over the network. And some of the properties of that video stream we can infer, or we may be able to infer, from the data itself. So things like frame rate and raster size. We could choose to look at how quickly are those video frames actually turning up over the network. That's going to give us our frame rate. We could look at how many pixels are turning up and how they're arranged, and that potentially gives us our raster size. But not everything can be inferred in that way, and there are other properties of the video signal that we are going to need to understand to be able to successfully reconstruct the video. So things like what color format are we using? Is it RGB? Is it something else? We need to understand whether we're working with SDR or HDR signals. And if we are working with HDR, is it PQ or is it hybrid log gamma? We also need to understand things like what color space are we working in. So these various attributes of the video signal, we're not going to be able to infer just from looking at the pixels or indeed looking at the timing that's coming across the network. So we have to do that separately, and 2110 says you should use SDP to do that. And this gives us a way not only of knowing how to interpret those signals, but actually how to find those signals in the first place. Now, SDP is just a text file, but in practice, that's actually not as helpful as it might sound. So let's take a quick look at what an SDP file might contain. Well, here it is. I am not going to go through this line by line. SDP, I saw quoted online, is essentially neither machine friendly nor human readable, which is great. So there are aspects of this file, like at the start of each line, you've got a single character and an equals. A equals something, C equals something. What does that mean? No idea. There are other aspects of this where we can start to pull out information that we realize we might need. So width and height, what is the exact frame rate, what's the color depth, and so on. So there's lots of good information in here, but it isn't really intended to be human readable. It is intended to be used by the receiver to work out where does it go to find this video stream and how does it interpret it. Okay, so 2110 says we should use SDP. Unfortunately, what it doesn't do is tell us how we should be implementing this within our system. So this is just text information. Should we copy and paste it around? Should we be copying a file across somewhere? Should we be doing something else? All the standard says is that as a sender, you have to expose this SDP information through your management interface, whatever that is. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you any more than that. So 2110 essentially leaves this aspect for other people to standardize. And indeed, other people have standardized this. But at its core, 2110 says SDP is the way to make sure that a sender and a receiver have the same shared view of the data stream. So the sender will generate the data in a way that the receiver is then able to understand and is able to reconstruct that video stream for us. So that gives us this extended shared interpretation of what the video stream is, how we need to interpret it when we're sending over an IP network.